Welcome everybody. Welcome to this general SharePoint development special interest group. Today we have a slightly different setup. So your usual host is enjoying a nice sunny beach, and that's why the other PnP core team members are taking over this call. So my name is Bert Janssen. I'm a service engineer at Microsoft, and I will be walking you through the slides. Whether that will be done faster than Vesa when it comes to keeping timing slides, I leave it up to you guys to judge afterwards. But the idea is to run through the slides and then have a demo. And the key topic for today will be around site designs and site scripts, because they just got released. Now, as usual, there's always people that maybe join these calls for the first time. So what's this all about? What's this general development special interest group all about? And this is a forum where we come together on a bi-weekly basis to talk around, let's call it everything which is not SharePoint framework or JavaScript related. So all other SharePoint development, PnP Sites Core, PnP PowerShell, any cool Azure stuff that you did, all these things which are not directly related to SharePoint framework or JavaScript-based developments are in scope for this call. There is another call, SharePoint framework, a special interest group, which runs on the other week. So next week, Thursday, there is that one where you can go and ask questions and get demos and get new cool stuff around SharePoint framework and JavaScript development. So that's what we do, and glad to have you guys here on this call. So PnP is all about SharePoint community. PnP equals the SharePoint developer ecosystem. And we would like you to be part of that. And you can be part and contribute in different ways. Typical one way would be to, and that's something that we actually should really encourage, and because we have this for the JavaScript and SharePoint framework SIG, but not really for this SIG. So if there's someone that has a pretty cool solution or something that they want to show that there's something nice, and you want to kind of get a spot here, do a demo of what you built, please reach out to us. So any one of the core team member, you can reach to us. We can get you a spot in this meeting, like for next time, and you can do your demo and show what you built. So that works pretty well for the SharePoint framework SIG. For this one, it's mostly us, the core team, talking and demoing, but we definitely would like to change that. So if there's ideas, please reach out. Another way to contribute, of course, is sharing, meaning when you build content, when you build something, when you fix something, when you have questions, please use GitHub, share the information with us, work with us, supply pull requests, issues, and kind of together we further improve the community and the quality of the IP. And that also kind of feedback is obviously also an important part. Any feedback is good feedback. So I'm going to mute someone because there is some noise on the line. It's a little bit weird that everyone shows up as a presenter in this call. So I think a different setup for this one compared to the other ones, but that's fine. All right, so what's the agenda of today? First of all, some quick general announcements and updates around SharePoint development. And then the key topic of today will be around site scripts and site designs. So there will be a couple of slides introducing the capability, talking about the feature. And then there is a live demo from Erwin van Hunen, kind of showing you a really cool scenario on how you can use site scripts and site designs to fully own and control the provisioning of your sites. And let me quickly check if our special guest is in the call. And yes, he is. So today we also have Sean Squires on the call. Sean is the PM owning these features. So any tough questions around site design, site scripts, we have the right person in the call to help you with that. So thanks, Sean, for being here.
More, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Okay. So, and then we we wrap up with the usual Q&A. I think there should be some time for Q&A this time, but we have said that before as well, and typically we end up just on time. So let's see where we end. Okay, from an announcement perspective, this is a bit of a repeat from last time, but it is important that we keep repeating this. So all our documentation, all SharePoint developer related documentation has been moved and centralized on docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint, or you can use the aq.ms/spdev-docs URL. So we have everything there. The SharePoint framework documentation, the MSDN documentation, the API documentation, so the PnP site score APIs, PowerShell APIs, all of that documentation has been moved over there and can be consumed via docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint and can be edited by you guys. So you can make changes, propose changes, because when you edit the page, you end up in GitHub, where you can then make a change, create a pull request, and then we can process that pull request and get your update into the documentation. So that's pretty cool, and highly advised to have a look at that. When it comes to issues, when you have an issue, there was some unclarity in the past, maybe around where do I log an issue and how do I proceed. And what we would recommend you, if you have an issue around APIs, around native product functionality, developer-oriented, like if you have a SharePoint framework issue, but also if you have an issue with ALM APIs, for example, or with the site design, site scripts that we just released, use aq.ms/spdev-issues to log an issue, because this list is being triaged on a weekly basis by engineering. And this for you is an easy way, actually often it's a faster way doing it like this, compared to, for example, when you have a Premier Support contract going that route. Obviously, you can choose both ways, but please log it in here as well, because then it has direct engineering visibility, which is important because we want to ensure the proper quality of what we ship. Okay, looking at the questions. No questions so far, so that's good. So let's dive into the topic of today. Site designs and site scripts. What is it? Why did we do it? Essentially, site design, site scripts is a feature that allows you to use the out-of-the-box site provisioning infrastructure, out-of-the-box site provisioning UI, like you see on the screen. You see the create a site wizard where you can create a collaboration site or a communication site. We allow you to use that infrastructure, that user interface, but give you the flexibility to change the created site. So you can combine out-of-the-box UI with your own custom site designs. And configuring a site can be as simple as maybe applying a theme. So you want to have consistent theming across all the created sites, but it can go really far, like creating libraries, subsites, lots of other things that you, custom pages, anything is kind of possible. So, but this features, the site designs and site scripts enable you to do this. So what are typical use cases? First use case is kind of doing some basic addition of content in the site. So addition of libraries or lists, for example, which you can fully configure and define in a site script, and we'll talk about site script pretty soon. Second category is more around branding, applying a theme. There is an action to apply a theme to a site. And the third category is the one that we will demo today later on in this call, and that's more around, okay, I want to fully customize and own that site provisioning, and I want to control what gets created in my site. So for that, site scripts, site designs allow you to call out to Microsoft Flow, which at that point, once you are inside Microsoft Flow, you can do anything that Flow can do for you. So start business processes, kick something off on the Azure side, etc. So I will talk a bit more about that in the coming slides. Now let's have a a look at how does it work? What do you see as a user, and what's the plumbing underneath? So what you see here is a communication site, actually the wizard, create a site, and you go to the communication site, click on the drop down, and you see those new entries, the Contoso Explorers program and Contoso Travel legal casebook. These are two. So someone muted the audience, but it also muted me. So I'm back. So I was talking around about these two site designs, which are custom site designs added by us, by the site design functionality. And when you click on one of those in the user interface, what will happen is we start creating the site, in this case a communication site, and we create a property back entry telling which site design needs to be applied to the created communication site. This property back entry triggers the site design to run. The site design will run one or more site scripts, and the site scripts on their turn will change the site, like adding a library, applying a theme, calling out the Microsoft flow. What else do we have? Like adding something to the navigation, for example, or joining a hub site. So there's a number of supported actions in site scripts today, and we'll have a list later on about which other ones. But these start running, and if you navigate to the site, you will see at the right side there's a panel popping up showing you the progress of the individual site scripts being running and site actions being fired on the site. So you can see that the site is being created. While we're creating it, we lock the site from user perspective, so the user cannot start fiddling with the site. So he has to wait until the site design is finished. At that point, he has a customized site and can start using the site and continuing doing other customizations that he or she wants to do. All right, no questions. Good. So we talked about site scripts and site design. So site design is a collection of one or more site scripts. And you might wonder, like, why isn't a site design also a site script, and why isn't this just one concept? But the idea behind is that you can have multiple site scripts. So you can have a site script that applies a theme. You can have a site script that applies a set of standard document libraries or lists. You can have a site script that calls out a particular flow. And you can then combine these individual site scripts into multiple site designs. So this gives you more flexibility on kind of maintaining your site scripts, your custom site provisioning, essentially. Now, a site script is this kind of JavaScript with JSON inside. And if you look at the JSON, what you see is, of course, it has actions. So we see the actions, and in this case, the sample has two actions. One action is called list.create or open, and the other one is theme.apply. And then each action, depending on the type of action, has additional options. So in this case, we're going to create a customer tracking list, which is just a plain SharePoint list, type 100. So we are reusing the SharePoint list types like they've been there for like ages, I would say. So then there's verbs being applied on the action. So there's a set description verb and add field if not exists. So I'm going to add a customer name field of type text, etc. So you can fully configure this. The other action, theme apply, is slightly more simple because it's just telling you which theme to apply. And this theme is like a new modern theme, so it's not the classic themes. So these need to be the new modern themes which are defined at the tenant level. So, but this way you can fully configure and kind of create your your site scripts. Now you might wonder, like, do I need to write this myself like this? Do we have a designer tool for this? And the current answer is, at this point in time, that's not the case. So you have to write these things manually using a text editor. Maybe someone in the community will pick it up and start creating some designer tool for this. But I think while this evolves over time, we'll get more features and more capabilities inside these site scripts, and maybe at that point there's also more options of more flexibility around how to create those site scripts. But today it is a manual thing. Let's see. At the bottom right, you see like a REST request to create a site design, and we highlighted some of the interesting attributes, the things that are pretty visible for once you apply the site design. So the title that's the string that will be visible in the drop-down. Remember the wizard where we showed the drop-down? So in this case, that's the Contosa Travel -legal casebook. Description as well is visible. And then script GUIDs is an array. You see that the brackets is an array of script IDs. So a site design can have multiple scripts being concatenated together and executed in order. The isDefault is a very important property as well. So when you look at modern sites, you have this modern group sites, modern team sites, which is a group connected site, and such a site can be created starting from SharePoint, one way, but you can also go to create one via Exchange, because at that point the SharePoint site will be backfilled asynchronously after you created the Exchange mailbox, for example. So there's different ways to trigger the creation of a SharePoint site if it's a group connected site. And if a site design is a default one, at that point the site design will be applied regardless of what was the entry point on creating the actual site. Whether you came via Exchange or whether you came via SharePoint, in both cases the site design will be applied. And then web template 68, that makes maybe not so much sense for most people, but that's the numeric value of the web template in SharePoint. In this case, it's a web template for a communication site. So communication site is 68, a regular modern team site is a 64. A typical question we get, can we apply these site scripts to other templates like SDS #0, classic team site? And the answer is no. So these site scripts only work on communication sites and modern team sites, so group connected team sites. Okay, as promised, a list of the supported functionality, supported site actions actually in the site script. So you can create lists and libraries with some of the settings. So you can set a description, you can create columns in there, you can connect the content type. You can control the site navigation, add a link into the site navigation. You can apply a theme, a modern tenant scope theme. So you can control the logo, so set a new site logo. You can join a hub site. Now, we didn't yet release hub sites, the concept of hub sites, but the site scripts already supported, so we're ready for the future, for what's coming up. And lastly, but definitely not least, is trigger logic apps, in this case using Microsoft Flow, because this is your way to do more than what the site scripts can do today. Now, what's coming up? What's something where we're looking into adding support for modern pages and adding a new customized modern homepage. Declarative formatting, so applying declarative formatting to your columns. Configuration of external access, site classification, etc. And obviously more features will come over time. Now that you have Sean on the call. Yeah, Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, guys, I think the declarative formatting on a column should work. Matter of fact, I think we have some samples out there, so you can largely just embed the same JSON into your site script to format those columns when you're in the create list and set column actions. So take a look at the documentation. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification, Sean. That's good news.
Yeah, and then I know some folks have been asking about things like external access and setting site classification labels. There's definitely more actions to come, and frankly, your guys' input, in terms of just what are the ones that you're really pining for. Those that'll help us prioritize that list. We know that there's a lot to do to catch up with many years of product, so we're trying to prioritize the ones that people are really asking for and needing. So let me know, let Bert know, let Vesa know, let Erwin know. Yeah.
Yeah, you use the PnP communication channels to reach out to us and let us know what's top of your mind when it comes to site designs and site scripts. Alrighty, let's move to this slide. Okay, so remember the three categories. One, just adding basic site theme, setting site theme, adding list library, etc. Then we talked around theme, so we had site list library, then theme, and then the third block was around fully custom provisioning. And this slide gives a bit more detail on what does it mean, how can you achieve this fully custom provisioning based on site designs and site scripts. So still leveraging the out-of-the-box user interface, which is a key important thing in my mind, because in the past you had to write your own user interface for your own site, custom site provisioning. That is not needed anymore. You can just leverage what we have. So there's no need to develop that, no need to host that somewhere on Azure, for example. So that really simplifies the work for you as a consultant, or as a partner, as a customer, to implement this capability. Okay, so let's assume we went to a wizard, we clicked create new communication site, we chose our custom site design. At that point, the site script, there's one site script in here that starts to run. The site script has one action which says call to this Microsoft Flow instance. When you call Flow, you can provide parameters. So in this case, we're going to pass along the site URL. So Flow gets being initiated. It does know the site URL. And at that point, it's up to you to decide what you can do in Flow. Flow has many extension points, so you can kind of trigger complete processes, business processes based on Flow. But in our case, what we are going to do in this example is essentially bridging from Flow to Azure. And one way to do so is simply by adding a message in a storage queue. So we are going to add a message simply containing the site URL in a storage queue. Once we are in an Azure storage queue, you can use the goodness of Azure. You can use Azure Web Jobs or Azure Functions to kick off another process. So in this case, the function is watching the queue. When something ends up in the queue, there's a new message in the queue, the function will see that, it will pick up the message and will start running. And that Azure function can do whatever you want. Now, this is about site provisioning, and obviously, as part of the PnP community, we have our PnP site provisioning engine, whether used via PowerShell or from C#. But a logical next step would be to use the provisioning engine to apply additional configuration to your site. So this way, in this model, you can bridge the gap with what is supported out of the box in the site scripts today versus what you need. So over time, there will be more and more actions appearing in site scripts. And there will be maybe lesser need to do this custom provisioning with PnP. But today, the PnP provisioning engine can do way more than the site scripts. So, but this way you have a nice combination of both, essentially. I think this is a really pretty cool scenario. All right, so let's summarize and then we can jump in the demo. So you can apply a default site design to a template. So the default part is important here because those site designs are always running regardless of how the actual site is created. So whether it's via the SharePoint site, whether via Change or from a different site, the site design will run if it's a default one. Obviously, each template can have multiple site designs. We'll show you in the UIs. You see here as well in the screenshot at the right side that for the Steam site, there is 2 additional site designs, Composer Site Flow and Customer Events, and you can have multiple. Something we didn't really talk about yet, and which is an important asset, and I'm not sure if everyone will demo it, but you can control who will see the actual site design. So in this drop-down, you see now the tree, but assume you have like an HR site design or a legal site design. You can scope that legal site design to an AD group called legal, and only people inside that AD group legal will see this site design in the list. This is a way for you to control who sees the design. Note, this has nothing to do with actual permissions on the created site. So if you have a site design that is only applicable for legal people, the created site can still be applicable and usable by other people outside of legal. That's just a SharePoint permission thing. But this is about who can see the site design in a drop-down. Erwin, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was about to say that I will not demo that.
Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, well, it's in the. If you go to docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint, there is extensive documentation on site designs already, site scripts, and how to configure the permissions is defined there as well, and explained there in much detail. So I think it's fairly easy to consume from that site. All right, what else do we have? We talked about this, and then finally, Microsoft Flow. Important thing, gives you your custom extension of this model. So with that, I think I'm done with the slides. So Erwin, take it away for a demo on site designs and site scripts.
Yep. Let me take over the screen. Screen you see right now.
And I see a big blue screen. Yeah.
Great. That's the only blue screen in Windows that I'm actually happy to see.
Yes, indeed.
Right. Right. So, site designs. What are your ways to provision a site design to your tenant? There are several ways of doing it. There is the CSOM API. You don't need the PnP extensions for that. It's just built into the tenant administration namespace in the tenant object. That one you can use. You can use the REST API, and you can use PowerShell. And the want to call them out of the box, but if you use the Office 365 management shell, there are commandlets there for you to use to create and change site designs and site scripts. So if I use the management shell, it's like get SPO site design. Will return all my current site designs, and currently have 2 site designs here. Intuitively called, one is called create list site, the other one is called site with list. I will actually demo the second one. Notice that if you do not want, for some reason, maybe you don't want to install the Office 365 management shell, the PnP PowerShell commandlets, they support the same. They're actually identical. In functionality, they render the data a tiny bit different, but the idea is absolutely the same. So here we have the site designs from the PnP PowerShell, and they work identical. So in order to create a site design, you need a site script. And the site script, as Bert already mentioned in the previous slides, is nothing but a piece of JSON. So I have a piece of JSON waiting here, being the create list design JSON. I'm opening that one. And we'll have a brief look at what this one is doing. Effectively, it's creating a list. That's what we tell it to do here, create a list. I set a description. The list is being called PnP project contributors. It's based on the generic list or custom list. I add a field being the project name. I add another field being contributors. And then I add this list to my quick launch. That's effectively what this template is doing. no rocket science, very simple, very straightforward. Just when you create a site based on this site design, on a site design that has this site script associated with it, it will create that list for you. So let's create this this script, and it's called the site script. So if I do get SPO site script, you see here site script. You see already I created one, but we'll just create a new one here. So I say add SPO site script. Now, well, let me first do one step before. What I need to do is put this script into a variable so PowerShell can use it. So what I do is usually select everything, copy it, Control C, go to PowerShell, say script equals get clipboard role. So if I look at what's in this variable right now, you will notice there is the JSON is now in that script variable. So now I can use it in PowerShell. So then I say add SPO site script, title, let's call it, because it's Thursday, and then the content, that's my script. That's all there is to it. I press enter, and the site script has been created. So get SPO site script. There's my site script. I keep track of this grid because that's what I will need when I create the site design. So now I add a new site design. I will also call that one Thursday. Title, Thursday. Web template, remember that Bert mentioned 64 stands for team site, 68 stands for communication site. So 64. Site scripts, and this one just takes that grid as an input. This is an array, so you can actually specify multiple grids here if you want to. And in PowerShell, it's very simple, just separate them with a comma. And then multiple grids, and then you associate multiple grids. That is interesting, for instance, if you create a site script that adds a list that you want to be able for all site designs. You just create one site script, associate that site design, that site script with all the site designs, and then you have specific site scripts that may be applied to like marketing sites or project sites, whatever. So you can actually sort of partition your site scripts into functionality and use them throughout your site designs. I pressed enter and my site design is there now. So now we see here Thursday and this site script has been associated with it. So if we go to the site, to my SharePoint tenant, and I click create site and I click a team site, there is my site design. And I say Thursday demo 1. Click next. I want a user there. It's creating the site, modern site, so it's really fast. Click finish. And now the slide out pops up and it created a list. It's doing that right now. It's actually slow.
Oh, why is that so slow, Erwin?
Yeah, I'm wondering about. To be honest, I've never seen a progress bar here.
Yeah, guys, this is so fast usually.
Yeah. For people interested in this, we already recorded a specific video about this whole process. So it will, of course, be in the video that we publish from this special interest group meeting, but we will also post another video specifically about site designs.
Awesome.
So you can
I'll add to that. When Erwin and Vesa demoed, and myself demoed this at Ignite and ESPC, we have a much fuller script that runs that does a whole bunch of stuff with the in-product actions, doing lists and adding a nav, and then calling out via a flow to Azure function that Erwin's going to show in a little bit. And all of that was taking less than 10 seconds. It was pretty remarkable. We're excited. So I'm sorry about this.
No, it just happens. It's a demo effect, I guess. Let's see what happens if I click close. The list is there. It's actually in. So maybe it's just a UI hiccup. That could very well be because the list has been created. It has been added to my quick launch here too.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm noting that. We'll take a look.
Yeah. So list has been created. You see my two fields there. The project name and the contributors are all there. So it was a relatively smooth operation, very simple for me to create. I'm the first to admit that, no, I'm not the first to admit, but I'm one of the people to admit that the JSON structure is not the most intuitive one. But you'll get the hang of it in the end. It's not rocket science. Just understand a bit on what kind of verbs you can use and how to put the parameters in there, and you'll be totally okay. So site designs are currently a very easy way to do it, to do things in your site, but you can't do everything. So if you want to go one step beyond what site designs allow you to do, that is the ability. Then you step into like, how do I extend site designs? How do I go beyond the whole concept of a site design? And that is by triggering a flow, and that is a very powerful function. So there is a verb. If we look here in this site design that I have here, this is again a site script. I called it the site design. It's a site script, and this one triggers a flow. This URL you can figure out pretty easily yourself by creating a flow, and there's a URL you can copy from that flow. If you want to figure out how to do that, you can just follow the documentation that we have available. I think someone linked already to it in the chat. But in the documentation, we describe step by step on, okay, how to create the flow, find the URL, copy that out, and paste it into the right location into your script. So this is the flow that I trigger. And if we have a look at the flow, if I go here, this is what the flow looks like. So it is a flow that is triggered when an HTTP request is incoming. So the SharePoint online will send an HTTP request to your flow, and what it will send to you is the URL of the site you just created. And what I will do with the URL, which is down here, is I will put it on an Azure queue. That's the only thing this flow does. You can obviously do way more things. Now, I saw some people asking, can we ask for more metadata? Well, you could maybe build it with flow. I mean, this is the moment something is happening, but you could do anything. You could just say, okay, create a list item in SharePoint, send out an email, have a user fill in the form. When the form has been filled in, then take a next step. And that could be to create a site, or go crazy there. I mean, the sky is pretty much the limit, and Flow is growing and growing in its connectors too, and the functionality that Flow has. So it's a really nice way of extending the site designs. So as I said, this Flow does nothing but just put the URL of the site on a queue. Now what happens then? This queue in Azure is configured here. I just a standard queue, nothing specific there. And then I created a function, and that function is a queue trigger. So the moment an item ends up in that Azure queue, this function will be triggered, and it's a PowerShell function. So what this function will do, it's like you see, it's total rocket science. Effectively, there are 2.5 lines of code that do something. I call this a half line of code because this line of code basically picks up that URL from the queue and puts it into this variable called in. That's the only thing that line does. Then those familiar with PnP and PowerShell might recognize this. I say connect to the site, and I do an app-only authentication in this case, and I get the app ID and the app secret from the variables that I set on this function app. So I don't have to specify them in this script, meaning that I would have to update all the scripts if these values change. Now I can just change those variables in the settings, and all my scripts will continue to work. And then the URL is then that same URL that I retrieved from the queue. So effectively, we're connecting back to the site that we just created with PnP PowerShell. And then what we do is we apply a provisioning template. And this provisioning template is available over here. We have the Flow demo template. If you look at, that's a standard template. And what this template actually does is create that same list, PnP project contributors, with the fields in there and everything. So it's a standard PnP provisioning template, nothing there. If you want to figure out how to set up this function, so how will this Azure PowerShell function be able to call the PnP commandlets? Again, in the documentation, we have a step through by save the commandlets there, upload them like this, and then you can reference them here. And they're actually located here in this modules folder. There we have all the assemblies that make up the PowerShell template. So this is the function, nothing in there. As I said, it's a very simple way of calling Maybe look at this here again. So it's just a few lines of code and then the PnP provisioning engine behind the scenes does the rest. If we go to my site again, and if I go to SharePoint and I create a site, that's a bug I've seen too. Sometimes you have to create site multiple times. There we go. Then we have create site with list, and this is a site design that has a site script associated with it that calls that flow. So it's Thursday demo 2. And next, creating the site. There we go. This was much faster. So it already triggered the flow, but the flow is obviously asynchronous, and it triggers the Azure queue. It adds the item to the Azure queue, then behind the scenes, it applies the PnP provisioning template. So if I look here, and if we're lucky, because we saw that yesterday, it was actually really fast. No, in this case, it's not. We have to wait a bit. So there we go. There is the list. So in this case, actually took a few seconds. It called the flow. The full flow added an item to the Azure queue. And from the Azure queue, we triggered a PowerShell function. The PowerShell function connected back to the site with PnP PowerShell and applied the PnP provisioning template. And the result is that it created this list. Sky is the limit with this functionality. You don't have to call PnP PowerShell. You can put anything in that Azure function. Whatever you want to do, you can put in there and connect back to the site and do something with the site. Or if you want to create a sitemap, or an overview of owners of a site in a specific list, you can do that too. It's all up to you. So it's a really powerful functionality. This.
Or you can, since this is a modern site, creating a modern client-side pages like a new modern homepage with new additional web parts on it, third-party web parts configured.
Yep.
All these things are possible just by configuring them in the PnP site template, essentially. So
Indeed.
Very powerful.
Indeed. If we go back to the flow, then if we go to the monitor here. So this is
I would underscore that the PnP piece here, guys. I mean, it's as you could see from what Bert showed earlier. I mean, there's only a limited set of in-product actions, but using the flow and calling to that Azure function just kind of opens everything up, and we saw that as a way to really close that gap, or for now, while we obviously build more stuff in the product. So, yeah.
So here you see the log effectively of the Azure function, and you see here the incoming request for the site. So you can log everything here you want to, so keep track of what's happening. And then we just wrote connecting to the site. And with the flow, if we look at the flow itself, then you see here that it ran 2 minutes ago. And it ran this. So that took less than a second to run this flow. Very powerful, very simple to use. If you look at the walkthrough, don't let that scare you away. It looks way more complex than it is. It's just a very simple steps. And the moment you've done it once, it becomes very easy, and it's very simple to set up. So this was my demo for today.
Thank you, Robin. Really, really cool demo. I think it's a super powerful scenario as well. Creating sites in a matter of seconds, using out-of-the-box user interface, but fully customized. I think that's key for enterprise customers and actually for all customers. So let me flip back to the slides, and they are loading now. So we can wrap up.
There's one thing.
Sure, all right.
It's just a little promo for PnP PowerShell, where you have to specify 64 or 68 in the SharePoint Online management shell. In PnP PowerShell, you can just write team site or communication site. That's it's a drop down.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
That makes a huge difference, of course. But yeah, great feature.
That is a good feature.
Alrighty. Okay, we have 15 minutes for open Q&A time. Doesn't have to be about site design and site scripts, anything SharePoint developer related.
Actually, hey, guys, I will make a quick documentation plug just because I've seen a couple comments. I think I replied at the top of the hour. Go check out aka.ms SP Site Designs, and that will take you to a bunch of documentation, including the JSON schema, the PowerShell, the REST calls, and then there's also on GitHub, similar to the column format stuff, and obviously all the PnP samples. There's another GitHub repo in there for site designs and scripts. So a few samples there, maybe stuff that you a spot for you to contribute from the community in the future. But go ahead and check that out, and it should get you up to speed. And Erwin and Vesa and Bert put together a great tutorial that just walks through all this that Erwin's referring to. So go check that out.
Yep, thank you, Sean.
Thank you, guys.
Let's work together on these site designs, and sharing is caring. That's our motto, you know. All right, any other questions? We still have Sean on the call. We don't have Vesa today, so we're going to try to answer them anyhow.
Vacation? What is that? Yeah.
Yeah. Why do we give people vacation? And if there's no specific questions, we can just save a bit of time and wrap up a bit earlier. But any SharePoint developer questions are fine for the Squall meeting. It doesn't have to be a site design, site script. A lot of messages passing by in the chat, but not really questions, I think, unless I have to scroll up.
Yeah, if you guys, if I missed any questions or if you have any follow-up questions, I'll obviously get them directly through Twitter or the PnP channel, or just send them my way via Bert and Erwin and Vesa.
So there's a question on subsites, Sean. What's the strategy? I think subsites, so site designs, site scripts versus subsite provisioning.
Yeah, so good question. Popular one, it seems. So the short story is this. We are looking to support it. No details I can share yet in terms of timeline, but most of, as you can tell from what we've shown and the demos and things like that, most of the infrastructure is there. It's really just a matter of there's a few things we need to tweak in the API to support the call, but we're looking into it now. We're also, since folks are probably thinking or asking, you saw all this stuff kind of happens in the flow of a new site being provisioned, and one of the things that we are looking at right now is being able to execute site designs on existing site collections. So amending, we'll probably see updates we're working on PowerShell updates, so you'll see that before you see anything in the UX. That's going to take a little bit more work, but you can imagine being able to have a new PowerShell command that allows you to effectively take a preloaded site design and just apply it to an existing site collection. So once we have that in place, really the next step is that we're pretty close to being able to do the sub-site support. So stay tuned.
There was another question around, do we validate the JSON site scripts when we send them to the tenant via PowerShell?
Not yet. No, sorry about that. We are putting some logic in place to help with the validation, but right now you're going to have to use your friendly JSON validator before you put stuff in there. The other thing we'll want feedback on as well is you can well imagine things can get a little bit scary if you upload a site script with like 10,000 actions. So there, you'll see in the documentation there is a limit. We've put the limit at 30 right now. That sounds to some people like fine. Some people have said, wow, that seems really low. So let us know, how that sits with you and the work that you're trying to do, because we obviously want to listen to the community and make adjustments there. But that's another thing to be aware of. And yes, Ralph, you can chain them. As I think Erwin or Bert mentioned earlier, the way that you can reference via a site design more than one site script. You can put together an array of them, and that's where we think we might have to put a little bit more robust limiting logic in there. But yes, you can chain them together. Because you might, as I think Erwin mentioned in an example, you might have, for example, some generic site script that you want to make sure provisions a list on every site collection, but then for marketing, you might want to have also an additional site script that only does a market-specific list or a market-specific function or something like that. Let's see.
Do site designs provide the ability to set site policies?
Yeah, in the backlog, Dean. Nothing yet. We are looking at certainly supporting things like setting classification if it's provisioned, but we're also working closely with the security and compliance folks to see how we can leverage those policies as well. So more, I hope, in the spring.
Right, so good news.
Yeah,
coming.
laugh out loud backlog. Yeah, the backlog is huge. But that's good. It's good to have a backlog. It means I have work to do.
So can these be run against existing sites? I think that's something that's also in the backlog being worked on, being able to run.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That one's that's been on our radar since we first started putting this together. So
right, and for clarity, that's again only running on the modern team sites or communication sites, not.
Yeah. So I've seen some questions
sites,
about that.
just to be clear on that site.
Thanks, Bert. Yeah, for sure. But anything that we do, even with existing site collections, guys, is definitely going to be initially limited to just the modern group-connected team and communication site templates. Please let your voice be heard if you think that there's a critical need to really get the classic site support in there. I mean, we have... technically it's feasible. It's really just a matter of we feel that there's more work that we need to do in order to be able to scope. There's certain actions that obviously won't work in classic sites, and then there's a bunch of things that we won't be able to necessarily do yet. And so we're sort of taking the tact of let's focus on the modern stuff first, and then we can start looking at classic. But let us know. Yeah.
So there's several questions around debugging. So what's the experience? So I assume that I uploaded a bad site script, or if something goes wrong while I put a good site script. So can people see which actions were fired? What's the outcome of the action? Is there some way for people to see more about the internals when it's running?
Yeah, the console app's going to tell you where the errors are, and then we have error handling in the actions in the UX. So the progress panel will report when an action fails or if there's something wrong with it.
Okay. So
unfortunately, there's more robust logging that we need to do, and isn't there always? So there's probably more work that we need to do there, but there is some basic logging for sure.
Oh, Dean has a question. Are actions performed by site script shown in the Security and Compliance Center audit logs? I don't know.
I'm not sorry, Dean. I'm not sure I understand that question. Are actions performed by? No. But make gosh, Dean, no, we're not doing anything with the Security and Compliance Center audit logs at this time, but I'd love to understand more of what you're wanting to have happen there. Bypass tracking of who created the site? No. This is still happening through the same site creation flow, and in fact, it'll be tied to the same. Especially since obviously you're using most of this is hooking into our existing self-service site creation experience and the admin center as well. It will be using those same UX affordances. And so I think there was a question at the top of the hour in the chat window about how this would apply to the admin center. We will honor those settings. So, you can imagine that even if a user did not have the ability to create groups because you had set that AAD property or as well as set the SharePoint admin settings, then they're only going to be able to see and apply site designs on the COM site template. And another thing to check out in the documentation, I haven't seen anyone ask about this, is We do support scoping the site designs. So you can imagine that right now the site design scoping only supports individual users and mail-enabled security groups. We're working on obviously expanding that so we can support Office 365 groups. But you can imagine Erwin, Bert, and I are in a security group. Erwin creates a site design and sets it for that security group. That scopes it to that security group. We will be the only ones in the UX who will be able to see and apply that site design. And you can read more about that in the documentation, including the PowerShell commandlets and REST to set all that stuff up.
Do we have anything to share around SharePoint 2019 versus modern experiences versus site design, site script? So, or is it too soon to share those details?
No, that's okay. I don't know how much I can publicly disclose about that right now. I can say that we're looking into it, but it's unlikely, just given where you guys all know that the on-prem stuff has to happen pretty early, so it's amazing that we're already kind of wrapping up the 2019 stuff. So I'm not sure if this stuff's going to make it in there. Will group-enabled sites be possible in 2019? No, because there's no group support on-prem.
What do you mean with taxonomy, Russell? Taxonomy field types? Is that what
taxonomy is awesome. We love taxonomy. It'll be on-prem. I mean, are you talking about something specific?
I think maybe he's mentioning about managed metadata field. Not sure.
Oh, yeah.
So there's limited fields supported currently today. And that's, I think.
Yeah, we have a bunch. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Bo. Yeah. Go check out the JSON schema article. It has a list of the supported field types, and you will notice that managed metadata is not among them. Sorry about that. That one it's a complex field. There's a little bit more work we need to do there to support that.
Right. But in the meantime, if there's critical functionality, if critical requirement for you, you can use the flow that we showed in the demo, calling out the max flow and then calling PnP. And in PnP, you can provision those fields. So there's always a workaround now. And
yeah, that's why, gosh, the PnP stuff, guys, it's powerful, and it's been refined over the years, and you guys are staying on top of it with all the new stuff in the feature XML. So obviously there's a lot more stuff you can do there. So before you say, oh no, it's not available in the product, go check out, and you can probably still achieve your scenario with what's available there.
Right. Then there's a question that popped up also quite a few times, and when does the new SharePoint Admin Center come out? When does it go to essentially the first release? And I think soon is a correct answer, but of course, it's relative.
Specific dates. I actually don't even own that. Let's see. Sebastian, I think, has said in the spring. So I believe that the pilot is active and closed right now, and I believe it's going to start going more broadly later this spring. So when I say spring, I mean March, April. But gosh, don't hold me to that. Soon.
Yes, and just to be clear on things, the site design, site scripts are in first release today, right, Sean? They're not yet in production, so your tenant need to be in first release to consume them.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. We rotated the site scripts and site designs are 100% in first release, which is for all of us to change. Now it's now known as targeted release. So when you hear me say that, I'm meaning the same thing. So yes, and we will continue to monitor and process feedback from you guys, and we're already kind of working on. We'll probably rotate more broadly in February.
All right, all good. We're hitting the hour, so I think we can slowly start to wrap up. So thanks everyone for being here. I think it was a really good session, lots of interactivity, lots of questions, lots of answers as well. So I hope you enjoyed it. And next week there is a new SIG meeting. In this case, it's the SharePoint Framework SIG on the 18th of January. But then the actual SharePoint Developer SIG, like this one, will be back in 2 weeks, so on January 25th. And hope to see you there as well. So let's wrap up with the learn, reuse, and share. you've learned things. I hope you can reuse things. And with that knowledge, please share what you've learned with us and with the community so we can keep on growing. Thank you.